Hello creators, Michaela here. Welcome to part 3 of my 3-part video series all about bringing your biggest creative ideas to life. First up, I'd like to give a big thank you to every single one of you who shared your experiences and questions following my last video. It was amazing to see so many of you taking action towards your big creative idea by taking part in the creative resource mapping activity. I know a lot of you have been in contact with me telling me how valuable you found the activity, which is so wonderful to see. If you haven't yet had a chance to give the activity a go, I'd really encourage you to make it a priority today. By doing this creative resource mapping activity, you're going to up your belief in yourself and up your knowledge in the resources that you have at hand already to make a start on your big creative idea. So I'd really encourage you to make it a priority. Before we get started on video 3, I'd like to do a quick recap of the last video. In video 2, I took you through the creative resource mapping activity. This activity is my #1 technique for getting moving with your big creative idea, and it's something I've used time and time again to make a start, even when I felt I didn't have all of the resources and materials at hand that I needed. By doing this activity in just 15 minutes, you'll realize that you have more resources at hand than you thought you did and in unexpected places. It's a simple activity that combines 2 of my favorite techniques, the Pomodoro technique and mind mapping. If you haven't yet had a chance to give the creative resource mapping technique a go, I'd really encourage you to give it a go today. There's even a creative resource map worksheet that goes along with the activity, so it's a really simple thing to complete and incredibly valuable. Over the course of the last few days, I've had creators from all around the world tuning in to watch this video series. And naturally, a few questions have popped up along the way. So I'd like to take a few moments now to answer some of the most common questions I've been receiving. One of the biggest questions I've received over the last few days has been about time. I've had you asking me, how can I make this work with the time I've got? I've had some of you come to me who are busy mums and you've barely got a moment to yourself and you're wondering how you're going to make this work. I've had some of you who are working in a full-time day job who have come to me and said, I get home from work and I feel exhausted, like I can't do anything else. And honestly, I understand. A few years ago, I was working in a full-time day job as well. I wasn't very happy in that job, yet I would come home completely depleted and exhausted, and I felt like I had no time to work on my big creative idea, which at the time was starting my own design business. So, I'd like to answer your question, what do you do if you feel like you don't have the time? If you're struggling to find the time to make a start on your big creative idea, I have one simple question for you today. If you can't find the time to make a start today, this week, this month, or even this year, when are you ever going to find the time to get started? Our lives generally become more complex and more busy as time goes on, not less. So I think that if you can't find the time this week or this month to make a start, you're probably never going to find the time. The truth is, there's never a perfect moment to get started. All you have is right now. We all have so many different priorities. I know that you have commitments outside of your creative work. You have family commitments. You might have work commitments. You've got social commitments. There's so many things to get done in a day. But what you make a priority happens. So this week, I'd like you to look at how much of a priority you are making this big creative idea in your life, and then I'd like you to look at the pockets of time. I talked about pockets of time in my last video when I was talking about the creative resource mapping activity. Essentially, a pocket of time is a small amount of time that you can find in your day or your week to get started. It might be 15 minutes, it might be half an hour, it might be an hour or 2 hours. But it differs from a big stretch of time in that it is much smaller. Often as creators, we only look to the big stretches of time. We want to carve out a whole half day here or a whole weekend there. But those times often don't come up. So if you're finding that you're not able to cut out big days here and big days there to make a start on your big creative idea, I'd really like you to look at it differently. I'd like you to go back to that creative resource map, and if you haven't done the activity yet, do it. If you have, I'd like you to go back to your map and really consider the pockets of time you've got throughout your week. Often we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to make a big start on our big creative ideas, but from little things, big things grow. So I would encourage you today to make a little start on your big creative idea. Make a little start today and then do a little more tomorrow, a little more the day after. And after a week, you'll be amazed at how much you've gotten done, truly. Another question I'm getting from some of you is that I've never done anything like this before. I don't know if I can pull this off. It's a valid concern, and I know how you feel. A few years ago, I was working in a day job I didn't enjoy. I had a lot of big ideas, but I didn't really know how I was going to pursue them, and I was feeling incredibly overwhelmed. I wasn't sure how I was going to make it work, and I wasn't sure if I was even the kind of person that could pull this type of thing off. So I'd like to address your concern right now. The creators who succeed aren't necessarily the most intelligent, the most talented, or the most productive. They are the creators who believe they can. And by believing they can, they do. Belief is an incredibly powerful thing in our lives. If you believe in something, you're automatically going to work harder, you're going to find the resources, you're going to attract that positive energy that you need in your life to make something happen. And that's going to feed on itself. So I would encourage you to start putting a little bit more belief in yourself. And I know this doesn't come naturally to everyone. Some of you would naturally believe in yourselves more than others, and honestly, sometimes it's a personality thing. So if that's it for you, I'd really encourage you to do the activity from last video's exercise. The creative resource mapping activity is something that can up your belief in a really tangible way. This activity is all about looking at all of the resources you have, all of the real resources that you've got in the time department, the people department, the materials department, and the space department. And by doing this activity, you're going to realize that you've got a lot more resources at hand than you thought. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now. You've done the activity and you're still not feeling confident. You're looking at your resource map, you've got a few resources here and there, but you're still not feeling like it's enough. I totally understand, and I have been there before. What I'd encourage you to do is two things. One, keep your resource map out over the next few days. Now that your mind has been triggered and you're thinking actively about resources, they're naturally going to pop up in unexpected places. So I'd encourage you to keep that piece of paper out with a pen next to it and keep it somewhere visible so that whenever something pops up, it'll be front of mind and you can write it down. The second thing I'd encourage you to do is actually put it out there into the world. I'm not saying you need to launch anything because we're at the very early stages right now, but I want you to seed the idea. Seed the idea out there on your social networks, for example, on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever other social networks you use, or even in person when you see friends and family. Tell them what you're thinking. Tell them a little bit about your idea and what you might want to achieve. And by doing that, you're going to start pulling in resources from unexpected places. As I mentioned in my last video when we were doing the creative resource mapping activity, there are a lot of people in your life that might have different expertise, that might even be able to be cheerleaders for your ideas, that might be able to point you in the right direction, or that might just have some experience that you don't have. It might not be expertise, it might just be life experience that they're able to impart upon you. So I'd really encourage you to start telling people about your idea, and that does one of two things. It not only starts bringing in potential resources to you, but it also ups your belief a little in your idea, because when it's just in your own mind, it can start to feel very stagnant and it can start to feel very much like it's not a reality, it's just a pipe dream that you've got in your head. But by starting to tell people, it starts to become real. Once you tell people, you've automatically got this feeling that you're doing this and you are going to follow through on that. So they're my tips for today. Of course, belief is a massive subject and there is so much more that I could say about it. But for now, I'd like you to just work with those tips and see how you go. I think it's really going to help you. Another question I've been receiving a lot over the last few days is, I don't feel like I have the skills I need to make my big creative idea a reality. I know you're confident in your creative area of expertise. You might be a skilled painter, you might be a skilled illustrator, you might be a skilled graphic designer or a skilled writer. But I know that outside this area of expertise, many of you do not feel confident in the other skills that it takes to bring a big creative idea to life. And in truth, there often are a lot of different skills. Depending on what your big creative idea, you might need to become a marketing expert. You might feel like you need to be a social media expert, or a pitching expert, or a PR expert, or a copywriting expert. There are so many skills aside from your area of creative expertise that it takes to bring a big creative idea to life. And depending on what your project is, you might feel like you're missing one or more of these skills, and it might be getting you down. I totally understand. What I'd like to stress to you is that every single skill is 100% learnable. Nobody's born with the knowledge of how to do a great marketing campaign. Nobody's born a social media expert. Nobody is born a skilled copywriter. So I'd really like you to look back. I want to take you back on a journey right now to when you were much younger, to when you started your creative pursuit. And I want you to think about your skill level back then. Whatever your creative area of expertise, I want you to think about what your skill level was when you first started pursuing it. When you first started painting, when you first started illustrating, when you first started sewing, when you first started designing, when you first started writing. What were you like then compared to what you're like today? I bet it is a huge difference because honestly, practice makes perfect. And over time, you have learnt so many new skills on the way, which have compounded over time and have made you the creator you are today. A few years ago, when I started pursuing my big creative ideas, I didn't have half the skills I have today. Honestly, when I first started, I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed too. I knew there was so much I had to learn in terms of setting up a website, in terms of writing content, in terms of pitching my ideas to people, in terms of marketing myself. I didn't know everything I needed to get started, but you know what? I learned. I put my mind to it and I learnt the skills I needed to learn. I looked to people who were experts in their field. I read countless books. I did different courses I needed to take to learn what I needed to learn. And today, I have the skills that I need to bring my projects to life, and it feels good. Of course, I don't have every single skill today. Nobody does. Nobody has every single skill they need for every single project. And I know that as I pursue different creative projects throughout my life, there are always going to be new things to learn. But I feel confident because I know that I have the capacity to learn. I have the capacity to take on new skills, to set my mind to something, and to take it all in. And so do you. So if you're feeling right now like you don't quite have the skills that you need to get started, and they're in specific areas that you've never dived into before, I would encourage you to think of this. You have everything you need within you right now to learn what you need to learn. And that is all you need. The capacity to learn is powerful, and you've got it right now. Now that I've answered some of the biggest questions that you have about pursuing your big creative ideas, I'd like to take a moment to just imagine with you. Imagine what it would feel like to be pursuing your creative ideas full force without hesitation. Imagine what your life would look like if you became the kind of person who went for it, who really went after what you wanted. What would your days look like? How would you feel about yourself and your creative work? And what new opportunities would come your way? I often find that when I pursue a new opportunity, so many more things come from it. It's not just that opportunity specifically that you're pursuing, but it's the doors that it opens up. For example, if you're an artist who's never exhibited before, that one act of pursuing your big creative idea of exhibiting at a gallery is instantly going to open up new pathways and new doors for you. If you're someone who has always designed jewellery or designed clothing or designed graphics on your own, and you've never put your work out there for the world to see, and you've never tried selling it, you are living in a great unknown at the moment. You're not sure of what's really possible with your work, and if you hold that back, if you keep that within yourself and you don't let it out into the world, you're holding back all of the possibilities that come from that. The simple act of putting yourself out there, of putting your work out there for the world to see, is going to open up so many new and unexpected opportunities for you. And you can't possibly imagine what they will be until you give it a shot. So I'd like you to imagine, just for a moment, that what you wanted to pursue was entirely possible. I want you to imagine that you had all of the resources at hand that you needed. I want you to imagine that every skill that you needed to bring your big creative idea to life was 100% learnable, and that you felt confident that you were able to learn it. I want you to imagine how you would feel and how the next 6 months of your creative life would be if you finally felt confident, if you finally felt like you had the time, and if you finally felt like you had the resources and the skills you needed to bring your big creative idea to life. In my next video, I'm going to have an offer for you, and you need to watch it if you're serious about making a start on your big creative idea. Be on the lookout for my next email, because this is a limited time offer. It's going to be hitting your inbox on Tuesday, so stay tuned. So that brings us to the end of today's video, but what I would absolutely love you to do right now is to leave a comment below and let me know how you're feeling about your big creative idea. Are you feeling more confident? Are you feeling like you might just be able to gather together all of the resources you need and learn all the skills you need to make a start? I would absolutely love to know. I'd also love to know if you have any questions that I haven't answered yet. If you have a question for me, leave a comment below, or feel free to email me personally on michaela@forthecreators.com. As I mentioned, I'll be sending you an email on Tuesday with a very special offer. It's going to be a limited time offer, so please make sure you tune in, open that email on Tuesday, and watch my next video. I'll see you then.